why would you ever want to play Glacial Cascade? And the single biggest reason is basically to create insane ice spikes explosion, which would look like this, and in game it looks really fun. It is also one of the cool things that I think is that this skill has built-in 100% fizz to cold conversion, and this is one of the few cases when scaling both physical and cold damage is done pretty much in the same way. And this is also the reason why uniques like Taste of Hate, Calton Heart, or even anything that does fizz to cold, fizz as extra cold, is a very huge increase in our DPS. Budget version that I'm running, it's around 155 strength and 100 dex, but in the upgrade version it's even more, it's 111 dex and 159 strength. So once you are gearing, make sure that you always meet up that attributes, because it's very hard to fit into the gear and also have and also being in the budget version friendly. Why Occultist, you might ask, and it's because Forbidden Power, and it's also because, but it's 54% increased AoE, just through the power charges and this node by itself. We also scale our cold damage in a great way. We are immune to freeze and chill, and we can use Malediction as well as a +1 curse, which really fits into our build in a good way. Our tree is mostly scaling the cast speed and AoE, and also getting +1 Intensify for our Intensify support. We also take 2 aura clusters to fit all our auras, which are mostly Discipline, Hatred, and Determination. We take some Cold Pen, some power charges on kill, and as for a cluster, I decided for budget version to go with physical one, because you can grab some things like Battle Hardened to increase your armor, and in order to fix our mana reservation issues, you also might need to grab mana reservation efficiency of skills cluster with either Hatred or Determination mana reservation efficiency, but this is your call. Defensively, we scale armor, HP, energy shield, we run Divine Shield, and we also have both ES and life on kill recovery. And for other Keystones, we do play non-crit in budget version, but you want to drop down one once you go in higher budget. And Inner Conviction gives us 27% more spare damage, but we cannot gain frenzy charges in any way, but that's completely reasonable. So going through the gems really quick, for Glacial Cascade we support it with Inspiration, Awakened Elemental Focus, Spell Echo, Faster Casting, and Intensify. The reason why I'm going for Spell Echo and Faster Casting is to make sure that our minimal time when we are standing still is as low as possible. Without faster casting, it's very hard to achieve it, and it's really hard to play this sort of skill and making sure that we are not dying to anything. So if you want to solve this issue, you need to get lots of cast speed sources, which is already not that easy on this build, but running faster casting solves that issue very well. And one of the other things that is really important is, in order to have maximum DPS, you need to actually stand still, but and have 4 Intensify stacks on you. This is not very hard to do on bosses, however on mapping it's quite difficult, and you need to get comfortable with casting your Glacial Cascade on both your max distance, and also you need to dodge your enemies well. Our auras are Discipline, Hatred, Determination, Vitality, and also Clarity. They are all needed to have our survivability in a good state, and Hatred is basically single most DPS aura. It has 26% this as extra aura, and also 19% more cold damage if you slot it into +2 AoE gloves, which is the case that I've done. Everything else is basically helping to get us more damage done. Frostbomb is for cold exposure. Frost Shield is to have another sort of buffered, which you can use to tank some of the damage. Molten Shell and Fall Molten Shell is for survivability with duration. We have two sources of mobility, Shield Charge with faster attacks and Flame Dash with faster casting and Arcane Surge, which actually makes sure that we are actually mobile build. We also use Summon Lightning Golem, and we also have Cold Source as Creeping Frost, Bone Chill, and Cooling Strike, which you can use to kill your bosses a little bit quicker than usual. Going through all of the gear slots, one of the best ones that you can use for this build is probably Void Battery. Main reasons for that it's because it gives us +1 power charges, it also gives spell damage per power charge, it also gives lots of cast speed, and it's really hard to get a better one than Void Battery already by itself because you don't have any source of power charges increase on once. One of the cool shields that you can use, however we don't use any evasion, is Calden Heart, because on max roll it can give us gain 15% of Fizz as extra cold, and this is an insane amount of DPS that we can have. It's also 29% chance to block shield, and on top of it, it also gives us +5 max cold res, which increases our survivability by a huge amount if we combine this with any sources of fixed damage taken as cold, for example, having a well-rolled Taste of Hate. So even though this shield is like once unique, it's actually a very usable thing to our build, and replacing it will require a huge investment. Going through the helm, it's very good to have a Glacial Cascade gain Fizz extra cold enchant, and if you can, try to go for +1 power charge with any decent stats. I decided to spam it with essences of Chaos Res, so I landed basically with some Fire Res and Crafted Life. For your body armor, you want to have as much energy shield as possible, and all other resistance attributes, resistance stats are really needed only if you need to solve the resistance issues. And for implicits, you want to go for Hatred Aura Effect and also Aura Effect on your non-curse aura skills. As for the gloves, this is a very weird one, however, Ascendancy Explosion is something very cool because we do scale both physical and area damage, which increases our explode damage, and this also has Temp Chase on hit, which is actually a very good defensive curse, so we don't die as many times as possible for some quick hitting monsters. Probably the weakest part of my gear is boots. It's only movement speed and onslaught on kill, and on top of it, it's nothing specific. I've decided to go with Crafted Light for that. Rings and all the jewelry is all the stat fixing that you need. Astra Mantis is probably the biggest one because it solves most of our stat attribute issues, which is lots of strength and dexterity, which without them you cannot have high level determination and high level faster attack support for our shield charge. Other pieces of jewelry basically fix our life resistances issues with Chaos Res included, and the ring can be a source of non-channeling, and the Frostbite on hit, which is our second curse source. The belt was the last piece that I needed to put together, and it has some life resistances, armor, energy shield, and some global fizz damage. Flasks are also very important. Divine Life Flask is to remove corrupted blood and also to recover some life. Taste of Hate is probably the best flask in this build because it both gives us lots of survivability from physical damage and cold damage also, and it gives us this gain Fizz as extra cold as another source of really good damage output. A Series Promise is another source of life leech, which we actually do have from our Watcher's Eye. However, this is a very specific mod, so if you want to have some decent life leech, you can go for a Series Promise with max roll on both Elemental and this as Chaos, because both of these lines work exceptionally well. Last two flasks are Granite and Quicksilver. Granite is of course for armor, and Quicksilver is to go fast. As for jewels, because I forgot to mention them, replica conqueror's efficiency is only to fix our mana issues with the mana cost of Glacial Cascade itself. I really recommend I to go for one jewel that cannot be cursed with silence, because this is a very nasty stat that you don't really want to encounter with any self-cast skill. Silence basically kills all of your damage output and it sets you to death. So always have cannot be cursed with silence with some decent stats on it. That really depends on your budget. And if you are going for a good Watcher's Eye, try to go for at least some hatred mod, and if you can afford it, you can also go for something like life gain on hit, or ES gained on hit, or some life leech, or some ES leech. That really depends on what's available on the market. Just try to grab anything that is in pair with your auras. You can even go for something like fist damage reduction while you are affected by determination. That only depends on the budget, so don't pay too much attention to it, and you can save more currency for actual more expensive version. Your bandit choice would be to kill or help Alira. That is really on call. I recommend killing all, because you really want to have as many skill points as possible for this build. And for Pantheons, in both versions, I think Lunaris is the best one to have as comfortable mapping as possible, and Garukan is very easy fix to make sure that shock is not killing you. However, if you are struggling with chaos damage, Chakari and Arakali might be both a good choice you really struggle. In case if you want to boss, Rislafa can be a good choice. All of the Pantheon choices are really up to you. However, Lunaris and Garukan are good to go if you want to just map with this. So this POB with not really maxed out gems, able to dish out around 1 million DPS while you are hitting with final burst. If you're not doing that, you have less than 500,000. It's not a good DPS, however, for mapping it's already enough. However, if you want to go on and scale your damage in a better way, you can try to do this in a way that I've tried to present. The few things that changed here is you get a better cluster jewel with Blanketed Snow, Prismatic Art, and Widespread Distraction. You also get this cluster with Crit Strike, Crit Multi, and Crit Multi against unique enemies. And one thing that you also changes is that you try to get a Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Jewel, Forbidden Flash combo for Occultist, which enables you to run your Explode Ascendancy. The reason why it's good is because you can drop your Ascendance gloves, and you can actually get decent gloves for your build. As for the gems, very important quality to get is Divergent, because it increases your final burst damage by 40%. However, it reduces AoE of an actual skill. You can also try to combine dropping faster casting for example, a weakened added cold damage. The thing that you need to do is you need to have another curse, which of course you can corrupt your gloves. However, you will remove some implicits from Exarch and Ether. So what you can do is that you can run Oriole 3 auras with Enlighten 4, and you can go for a weakened Blasphemy with Elemental Weakness. This way you'll get another curse, and it will be running 100% of the time on enemies. And with this, your gloves will be a much better version than the Ascendance ones. As for the items, the recommendations would be something like this. The shield price to craft is around 8 to 9 divines. So first you will try to grab something from trade, and after that, if you really want to craft this shield, the way how you would approach this, if you would want to fossil spam any decent +1 cold with life or with cold damage or spell damage version, then you need to try your best to have free prefixes and any open suffix. You will craft prefixes cannot be changed, and reforge harvest to get critical strike chance for spells. Guaranteeing any other stat than that is really high investment, and is probably the best thing that you can keep. Helmet is a very RNG, it's +1 power charge and elevated minus cold dress with an enchant. This can cost you around 4 divines, but this helmet will give you lots of damage. The body armor doesn't change really much, it's only upgraded implicits, and after that it's basically grabbing as much energy shield as you can on body armor. The gloves are a very good upgrade to defense, because you will try to stack as much energy shield as you can and try to get a nerve on hit and cold exposure, which enables you to no longer run your frost bomb as a necessary gem. And the thing that it will increase our DPS in a big way is Ralaker's Impatience. If you don't know if you are using Inner Conviction, Ralaker's Impatience skills will actually make you gain frenzy charges, because you will set your minimum to a maximum and it's not counting as gaining charges. This way, your build while standing still will have free frenzy charges, and this is actually a very huge increase to our DPS, which is very important, because in this version we don't have any onslaught source unless we run a silver flask, which is loss of movement speed. But if you want to do so, you can do that. Onslaught is actually a very important source of DPS on this build. And jewelry doesn't really change. If you can drop Astromantis because you have required stats on your other kill slots, you can always do so. And class also don't really change, and everything basically the same as in the other version. It's only about getting more optimized, like Divergent Glacial Cascade, having other sorts of curse, and also grabbing more ES, some plus cold gem levels, and probably getting some sort of Ashes of the Stars or +1 or +2 and amulet. So trying to summarize the build, this build is a very good thing to map tier 16 maps and have good clear, and also being really survivable. You can eventually pause with this build, however I believe it's very hard to do it without really optimizing your damage output. And if you want to pause, I would actually recommend trying out a little bit different build, something that actually pays attention to hitting single target DPS. This build is really cool looking, it has really good playstyle, and it's only not beginner friendly, as you need to optimize how you are casting your Glacial Cascade in order to deal maximum amounts of damage. But for regular mapping, just casting it by itself, it's already good enough. And it's really hard to die with this build. I actually had one of the greatest times playing something that is actually tanky, and I'm also really, and on top of it, I'm also really satisfied because this is the first time that I created a build that's actually endgame viable. And yeah, that's really it. That's really everything that I wanted to say. Really good build that can actually do mapping content on a very high level, and while being quite tanky on just level 92. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next guide that will probably be in around a month or so.